you have a couple of really good principles you build on for each one of those buckets for people. And one of them is the real estate one that I think is you really piqued my interest when you told people you're 7 properties away from retiring. So you have a property
Yep.
strategy of for people that are want to get in the real estate bucket. Talk a little bit about your 7 property real estate strategy for people that are thinking, I got to buy a 100 unit apartment building. You really don't. And you would be surprised if you're going, well, Toby, I can't do that anymore because prices are too high in real estate. There's still some options you can. So for my real estate bucket people, talk about how the average American can actually retire through real estate with less time in houses than they think.
Yeah, we got the median price up over 400 grand in the United States, and everybody thinks that's what it costs. You're neglecting the Midwest. You're neglecting the flyover states. You're neglecting places like Indianapolis and Winston-Salem and Charlotte and Kansas City and Idaho Falls. So like some of these off the trail places, and where you can buy houses still in the $100 to $150,000 range that are cash flow positive. That's why I say you're about 7 properties away. Depending on what the average rent is of those properties, you could get, let's say you were able to get 7 houses and they were all producing $700 a month of the positive income. Then the people always say, well, how do I buy this? That's a lot of money for me. But I'm just looking at it saying, just think about this for a second. The average house was 150 and you bought 7 of them. You're in it for, what is that? Right around $1 million, right? But you would never have to work again. It would kick off enough cash to where a typical person would be able to live. And before you say it's only this much money, it's indexed for inflation. Your rents go up. If you need cash, you either trade one of those houses, sell it, trade it up, borrow against it. There's things that you could do to get access to additional capital if you had to. But I'm a big fan of not having debt. I'm just one of those guys that I'm not a big leverage person. I know there's folks out there that, if you had the biggest lever in the world, or you can move the world or something like that, move the stars. Leverage is still fire, and I don't like to play with fire if I can avoid it. So I'm looking at saying you're probably 7 houses that you own outright away from probably never having to work again. And once you realize that and it starts to become real for you, then you're going to focus and say, what do I need to do to build up that portfolio? And it's not as hard as you think. And you might be sitting on money in a 401k, for example, or your IRA, and you didn't even realize that you could use that. You may have equity in things where, there might be some leverage component where you're saying to get in, I'm going to do this, but then I'm going to attack that debt and pay it off, and then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to attack that debt and pay it off. And all you're doing is you're just slowly moving towards your goal. You're making incremental changes over a period of time. And if you get to that 7 properties, that's about the magic number that I've seen where now it's optional. Do I need to work? It's optional, And if you say, but my lifestyle is such, okay, but you don't need to work. You're just choosing because you want to live a little higher degree of lifestyle. But you could live a very good lifestyle making, between $5,000 and $7,000 cash take home pay, because rents, the way they work with depreciation, you're probably not going to pay much tax on it. You still have Social Security. You still have other things that might be paying in. And you realize I'm actually closer than I realized to being retired. And for me, I like simplicity. So 7 properties outright, I'm probably retired, depending on who you are, what other things you have going on. And then if you want to work, continue to work. But there's a big difference between working when you're a volunteer versus, I can't lose this job. There's a huge difference. Or if I'm working, saying I'm using the money that I'm working, I recommend that people live off of 70% of what they take home. And then there's 30% there that can be used for investments, paying down debt and giving. I would focus on the giving, but we could spend an hour just on the giving side. There's a magical thing that happens when you give. You get it back in tenfold. But you try to just consistently invest over time, and magically the numbers conspire to make you very wealthy. And the best example I can give you is, I think it was the Ramsey Institute. I think it was Hogan wrote a book where they interviewed 10,000 millionaires, and the number 3 profession for millionaires was teachers. A good chunk of these people, about a third of them, had never made over $100,000 a year in their life, but they consistently invested. The other 2 categories, the number 1 category was engineers, very factual, very system oriented. And then accountants were number 2. People that understood cash flow. They understand income and expenses. And they understand what a liability is versus an asset, probably better than most. And how do these top 3 professions? I didn't see doctor. I didn't see lawyer. I didn't see salesperson, right? And I think part of it is because if you just focus on the income side, but you don't do anything about where I place that money, where I direct it to, maybe you're just buying a really great house in a great neighborhood and you get the really nice car and lots of nice suits. maybe the money's going out too fast. You're not living off of 70%, but your lifestyle creep got out ahead of you. And the next thing you know, you don't have a ton to invest. The people that have done well tend to invest regularly over a long period of time. And statistically, it's about 28 years, which for some people is like, I don't want to wait 28 years. Okay, but you can accelerate it. I'm just saying that statistically, if that's what you did, you would retire a millionaire, right? And you probably wouldn't have to work hard. You probably have a good retirement. In 28 years, sounds like it's a long time, but it's over before you know it, right? It's just consistently doing something. Now, if you want to get it down to, I want to retire in 6, 7 years, you can do that. And it's just being very specific about what type of investments you get into, which ones will give you the best chance to have huge gains. Anybody that invested with us, and we work with Aaron Adams over there at Alpine, and I'm just looking back, anybody that bought properties with Infinity back in, 10 years ago or whatever it was, those houses pretty much uniformity. Like they're probably doubled, if not tripled in many cases, and the rents are way up. And so now they're like, oh, I missed it. No, today's the next best day. 10 years from now, we're probably going to be having the same conversation. So, it's just time in the market, not timing the market. Get that out of your head. You don't need to make $1 million right away. You want to put yourself in a position where you're going to achieve it. Regularly, slow go, statistically, you're going to have success. And that's what you do.